Umbrella Academy, created by Gerald Way and produced by Jeremy Slater. Now, originally I had never heard of this comic book series. It was created by the frontrunner of My Chemical Romance, which I thought was really cool since I kind of grew up in that kind of punk rock, whatever era. It was really interesting to see a comic book adaptation that just wasn't by Marvel. You know, we have so much of the Marvel stuff, and then we have well, at least for Netflix, we have Marvel, and then we have some of the DC TV shows. But in terms of Netflix, there really hasn't been much comic books related stuff except for Marvel, so I thought it was really cool to see a different comic book series, and it's by Dark Horse, which I'm a big fan of. Umbrella Academy begins with 43 superpowered infants that are just suddenly born to mothers who had no previous signs of pregnancy. A rich inventor named Sir Reginald Hargreaves adopts 7 of them and starts to raise them as superhero children under the illustrious banner of the Umbrella Academy. Unfortunately, his methods of training were harsh and left all of them emotionally, physically scarred, and just overall messed up. Some things I really liked about it was just overall how different it was from the other Netflix series, Netflix comic book shows. Not that I don't like the other Netflix Marvel comic book shows. I've watched all of them. I was a real fan, loved them. But it was nice to just have something a little different. It was a little stylized, which might turn off some audience members, but I thought it was okay. And figuring who the creator was, I kind of thought, well, it kind of makes sense how there might be a musical scene, or it might be a little hyper stylized compared to the Marvel set comic book genre that's already been done by Netflix. They have their whole thing going on. It's a series that's not all about action. Not to say that the good action scenes aren't there, because the donut shop scene towards the beginning of the series is absolutely amazing. Badass. Here we have people with superhuman powers that were born with no explanation, are raised by a guy that locks them up and treats them like the X-Men, but way worse. And how are they supposed to grow up? Like, think if you were super strong and you had superpowers and then your dad abused you all the damn time, you might not come out the best superhero, or just might be a little messed up in the head psychologically, emotionally, all that stuff. Even though these characters are all adults, they are still dealing with the psychological trauma, and that's what really makes the show work, is they are constantly dealing with real life things. It's like, yeah, he has superpower, dude can throw knives, cool, but they are really humanized in this show. It's not like, it's something I really liked about the Daredevil series is I know Daredevil is known for bleeding, and I know the comic books do it well, but a lot of superhero shows don't like to show the hero being weak, and I loved how Daredevil just got his butt whooped all the time. And it's nice to see characters just be humanized a little more, That being said, the show might have some drawbacks for certain audience member in the sense that it is a bit of a slow burner. They have the big crazy scenes, like I said, the donut shop and scenes later on and things like that, but the show is definitely trying to build a feeling of emotion throughout the episodes. Because there are some episodes that are kind of draggy, and it was like, okay, let's go, I want to see some more superhero stuff. But it was kind of important for me to care about these characters later, because they might have just been extremely disposable, and I liked almost all the characters. There's a time crunch in the show, so that definitely helps with the pacing and needing to get from point A to point B. The problem is that there's so much going on between A and B that all of a sudden we forget where we were going, and we were so involved with what was going on during the show, and then all of a sudden we have to get brought back for the finale for this big ending that was kind of, it's in the background the whole time, this thing's going to happen, but it wasn't really what was going on for the whole show, and that might make it feel a little slow. Because there's so much going on, I could see how some people might feel the ending was a bit rushed, just a little bit. I think it could have had another episode or two maybe, or the draggier episodes, they should have condensed a little more that was going on rather than having all these subplots. But I enjoyed the subplots, so you got to kind of take it, how you want. Another thing I wanted to mention is cliffhangers. This season does end in a bit of a cliffhanger. I don't consider that a spoiler, but you have to be very careful with cliffhangers. You leave the ending too open-ended, and the fans feel like they were cheated out of this built-up satisfaction, towards the last episode. Having them wait a year plus they might lose interest in the show, or even by the time season 2 comes around, they might forget the ending in total. But then again, they probably want you to rewatch the series, so maybe that's on purpose. A good example for cliffhangers for me that I just did not like was the most recent season of Seven Deadly Sins, but I guess we'll talk about that in a different video. The show was extremely successful, plus they already announced season 2, so I'm hoping that they will go back into some of the plots that were introduced in season 1 that they kind of dropped off. I could see if they do not continue it in season 2, and I think it would be a missed opportunity, because there is, again, no spoilers, there's a weird scene that they just don't, it's just in there, and they don't really explain it. If you haven't read the comic books, you won't know what's going on. So I really hope they dive back into the original lore without just going way, it doesn't need to be a comic book complete adaptation or whatever, but I just hope they go back to the stuff that was established in the first season. A few last minute thoughts. I was really worried about certain characters being extremely annoying, a whole Jar Jar Binks situation. But around, I think it's episode 3 or 4, this character's whole arc just changes, and he really just, it made the show so much better for me, because I was really worried when they introduced him, and it was just kind of whiny, and I was like, alright, is this just like a side character for like the comical relief? But the character has a good arc. And he ended up being one of my favorite characters, definitely, by the end of the season. Another person I want to mention is Aidan Gallagher. He's the one that plays number 5. 15 years old, and he rocks his character. I really, really liked it, because there's something going on with his character as well. And when it was introduced, I was like, okay, this can be kind of really bad and cringy, or what are they gonna do with this? But the kid just rocked it. He is a badass, and I am so looking forward to seeing him in season 2 and seeing his more badass self that was introduced in season 1. All in all, it's a very solid comic book adaptation, and if you're a fan of the comic book Marvel stuff or comic books, or even if you're a sci-fi fan, because like I said, it's not all action comic booky stuff. There's a lot of drama in it, so I would highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. I've only read a few issues, but from what I've heard, it's not extremely strict to the source material, the comic books and stuff, which isn't a big problem for me. It's an adaptation, right? The comic books don't need to be just like the show. The show doesn't need to be just like the movie. As long as it works for what it is, and I have a good experience, and you take me out of my world and bring me into your world, that's what's important. I think the show did it very, very well. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing or leaving a like, a comment, whatever. Really helps support the channel. I'm Jacob Newvegas, your host for the Lore Horde. See you next time.